Okay, so in the last session we talked about standard list controller, right? So we saw how we can actually display multiple records on a page, right, using the standard controller. Now we did an example where we used input field component inside the column, and which was pretty simple. So all that you need to do is you just need to start the column component, close the column component, and inside the column component include the input field component. That's what we did, right? Okay. Now let's go ahead and uh, do the same thing with a different approach. Okay, so first of all, let me quickly go ahead and open that page that I created yesterday, and then we're going to make a few changes on that. Okay, this is what we have. I think this is the page that I was creating, VF8. Yes, this is the page that we created, VF8. So let me just look into this page. Okay, this is a page that we created. All right. Now I want, basically what is my requirement? Let's go by the requirement. The requirement is that I should be able to edit multiple records on the user interface, right? So I need a UI that allows me to edit multiple records. Fine. For that, what we have done, we have included an input field component here. This one. Okay. So we have made this field as an input field component. But the problem is that the look and feel of this input field component in the list is not that good. Okay, it doesn't look that neat. Then again, those dollar symbols are not appearing here, right? If you look into this page is not looking that clean at this point of time. So what we can do is we can try to make this page editable in different approach. So what we're going to do, we'll make this field look like a read-only field, just like this one, just like this field. Okay, but I would I will enable an option which will allow me to double click on the record and edit the record. So that's what we're going to do. All right. So for that, we just have to do a very small thing. So first of all, let me just remove this input field thing from here. So I'm going to remove the input field thing from here. So let me comment out this part now. And I'll allow this one. Okay. Number 8, what is the problem? Mutate it out. Sorry. This should be exclamation mark. I've put to 1. Yeah, now it's commented out. Okay. Now it also now this field is also looking like a read-only field, and this looks better actually. More readable. With input field, it was not readable because it's number field. I definitely want the users to read it clear. So input field was not working that well. So now what I am gonna do, I'm gonna display it in the same format. This is the read-only format. However, the end user should have the option to double click on the record and then edit the record. Okay. To do that, there's a component called inline edit support. We're going to use that. Okay. How do you do that? It's just one component that you have to use inside the page block table. So before the close of the table, you use the component apex inline edit support. That's it. So this is a component that we have to call. Okay. It is going to enable the inline edit support for the entire table. Click on save. Okay. Now inline edit support is enabled. Double click on any record, you should be able to edit it. See this? So again, you don't have to do anything. There is one component which allows you to do that, and you just have to call that component inside the page block table. That's it. Okay, nothing else. Now you double click on the name of any record, you double click on the stage, you double click on the amount, whatever field you want to edit, you can just double click on that record. Okay, so this inline edit concept is the same, is that only the data will appear as a read-only data, and you can double click on the record to edit the record. All right, so that's something which can be done here. Okay, now this is the second approach of editing the records in a list. Okay. Now there is one more small requirement that I have. Currently, if you see, I have included the inline edit support and inline edit support has got enabled in all these three columns, right? Which means the inline edit support is available in all the three columns, right? You can double click on this, you can double click on this or on this. Now I have a slightly different requirement. My requirement is just to make the amount field editable. Okay, other two fields should not be editable. Then what do you think we should do? Look into the code and let me know. Currently, I have included the inline edit support inside the page block table, which by default makes all the columns, which by default applies the inline edit support on all the columns. If I just need it in one column, not on all the columns, then what should I do? So then you have to put it inside the column. Exactly, right? So that's the logic. So what we are doing right now, this is the page block table. If I put inline edit support inside this table, everything inside this table is getting affected by the inline edit support. If you just want it to be inside the column, then you have to put it inside this column. Okay. So what you have to do, you have to start the column component and the column component inside that you have to put the inline edit support. All right. That's what we have to do. Okay. Simple logic. All right. But there is just one small thing that needs to be changed. Yeah. This logic is absolutely fine that it has to be put inside the column, but inside the column again there is a bit of logic that we have to do, which we're going to do now. Okay, so first of all, let me create another page. I'm not going to confuse you guys with same page. I'm copying the entire code. I'll copy the entire code and we'll create another page. Okay, now this is the page. Okay, in this page I want the inline edit support only to be applicable for the amount. So what we have to do, let's make the changes to the code here. I need to start the column component and close the column component. Okay, look into this very carefully. Now because I've started the column component and closed the column component, now inline edit support I want to bring inside this, that's fine. But which component do I use to bring the value attribute? Because now for value also I'll need one more component here. Which component do you think I should bring in here? What value I want to display? For that also I need a component, right? This is just created a blank column. Now I need a component inside this to show the value of the field. Which one should I use? Last time we used input field. Last example we used input field. Do you think input field component will make any sense here? Because again input field is going to make it input field editable, by default editable. What is the point of input field, right? Basically this thing has to be shown here. Which component do I use for that? Can I use input field component? Obviously no, because input field base the concept of input field is editable. Then what is the point of putting inline edit support on an input field? So we cannot do that. We are going to use a different component. What we need, see, try and understand the requirement. We want the data to be displayed in read-only format. There is another component called an output field component. All right. So we are going to use an output field component. Output field component can show your data in read-only format. Okay. So I'm going to use output field component here. Apex output field component. Okay, like input field gives editable data, output field displays data in read-only format. Dot amount, right? Save it. Okay. See, output field component displays the data and it displays it in the read-only format. Now I should be able to use inline edit support in this. So inline edit support needs to be inserted inside the output field component, which means you have to close the output field again. And inside this you have to use the inline edit support. That's it. Nothing else. Save it. Saved. Yeah. If you double click on this, it's editable. Alright. If you just have to use it for one column, first of all, start the column, close the column. Inside that, you have to use the output field component. Inline edit support cannot be used with input field component. It has to be used with an output field component. And then inside the output field component, you should put inline edit support. Okay. So that's how it works. Alright. So for one single column, this is how it can be done. This header is not appearing, so what do I do? How do I put the header to this? I'm not getting the header value here by default. What should I do? How to get the header value? So header value is an attribute in which component? Column component, right? Yes. Not in page block. It's in column component. Apex column component has got an attribute called header value. Okay. So this column header, this column has an attribute called header value. Use header value equals to whatever amount. Okay, and then click on save. Yeah, done. Fine. All right. So we are now able to create pages that display list of records. Now we are going to do a very interesting example where I'm going to combine a list of records. So now we have seen earlier we created page with single records, details of a single record, right? Then we created page with list of records, the one that I was doing right now. Now I want to combine these two things. Okay. Now the requirement is that my end user wants to view the list of records, and then he also wants to click on a record and see the details of that record. Okay. So now let's say this is my page. Okay, try and understand the requirement first, and then understand the concept, and then understand the code. My requirement is pretty simple. I want to display a list of records. Let's say accounts. Okay, I want to display all the accounts here. At the same time, I want my end users to have an option of clicking on an account record and view the details of that account record here. We have seen a lot of these kind of pages on websites, on web. You just view a list of things, then you click on a record and you see the details of that particular record. Correct? Same kind of a page we want to design now. We will display the list of accounts, and the end user should be able to click on one record, and then he should be able to see the details of that record. All right. Now here there is a very small concept that we have to understand. If we understand that, then set up. See, this page will have two sections. Okay, one is going to be the list section, one is going to be the detail section. Okay, try and understand this. This page will have two sections. One will be list section, one is going to be the detail section. In the list section, I'm just going to use the standard list controller concept to display the list of records. Fine, which is pretty simple. In the detail section, I will use the Apex detail component. Remember Apex detail component we used to display the details of the record? I'm going to use that component. Okay, and this Apex detail component requires an ID. We have seen that, right, in the first one or two examples where we used the detail component. We have seen that. So it requires an ID. It basically can, what does an Apex detail component do? It displays details of a record. It takes an ID and displays the details of that record, right? So this detail section, we are going to use detail component. However, this detail section is going to require the ID. Okay. So what we will do, we'll define a mechanism. We'll just need to define a mechanism so that whenever a user clicks on a record here in the list, ID of that record is taken from here and it is supplied here. That's what we have to do. Simple. That's all we have to do. So for that we have to define a parameter which can carry the value from here to here. Okay. So there's a parameter which we are going to define. Parameter is kind of a variable. Okay. So there is a variable that we have to define. This variable is going to take the value of the record on which the end user clicks. End user clicks on a record, variable takes the value of that record, and that variable is called here. Every time end user clicks on a new record, the value of the variable gets updated. As a result, the data in this side gets updated. That's the simple logic. That's how we are going to go about it. Okay, fine. Now that's the concept that we're going to use. Now let's start working on this. See how it works. So we'll go step by step. First things first. First of all, let's create the list of records. So let me create a new page for this. Okay, I'm starting with account controller, so I'll say standard controller equals account. Even before getting the list, let me just form a bit of layout so that we can understand what is going to go where. So Apex page block, put a title to this, call it passing parameters. See, so first thing that I've done is I've just done the layout. Okay, so there's a page block, then I created a page block section just to make sure that I get two different columns. So page block section gives me two columns. First column I call it as list, second column I call it as details. That's what happened. Okay, so I've just done the layout of it. So in the left side column, in this column I'm going to display the list of records, and here I will display the details of the selected record. Because there are two columns and there will be too much of data, I don't want the sidebar here. So let's remove the sidebar so that we get a little bit of extra space. So we are just going to remove the sidebar from the page. Sidebar equals false in the Apex page component. Looks better, right? All right, good. Okay, so layout is fine. Now I have to first of all create the list of account records. So if I want list of account record, I need one more attribute in the Apex page component, which is called record set var. call it whatever you want, and then come to your Apex page block, which has to display the list, create the page block table. It's the same thing that we have done earlier for creating the table of records. So I'll quickly type it in. Three columns I need. Whatever number of columns you need, you just want to put them. So first one can be a dot name type industry. Okay. Fine. So half of the page is ready. List is ready, right? So the list part is ready. Now what we need to do, we basically need to click on the record here, and on the click of it, there is, I need to define a parameter which can take the value of the ID. Okay. So when I say click, which field I want to click on, that I have to decide. So one of these fields, one of these three fields have to be clickable. Okay. One of these fields have to be clickable. Okay. Okay. Fine. So one of these fields have to be clickable. Which field you think you want to make clickable? I should be able to click on one of the fields, right? Then only that ID will be taken and all, right? Which one do you think we should use? Name you want to use? Okay, let's use the name. Okay. If I have to make it clickable, what I need to do? I need to use a command link inside this. Correct? Okay. So the name field has to use, it's a column, I have to use a command link in this. The same concept, start the column component, close the column component. Inside this Apex command link, value is a dot name form tag is required, so let's put the form tag, Apex form tag. Okay, so now this has become clickable, but what is it exactly gonna do? It's gonna do nothing, right? So what we need to do now, we need to pass the ID of the record to a parameter when this record is clicked. Okay, so first of all, what I need to do is I need to define a parameter here. So start of the command link, end of the command link. Inside this command link, I'll define a parameter, Apex param. Okay, there's a component called Apex param, which is used for defining a parameter. Parameter is like a small variable which can take a value. So this Apex param we have defined, which is basically used for defining a parameter. Give a name for the parameter. Name of the parameter can be count ID or whatever. And what is the value that we are going to pass into the parameter? ID of the record, a dot id. Okay, so I've defined a parameter called account ID, which will have the value of a dot id. So every time you click on a record, this parameter is going to take the ID of that particular record. That's it. Okay, now I have to call this parameter account ID in the details section. Okay, if I can call this parameter in the details section, every time I click on the record, this parameter will get updated and the details will also get updated. Okay, so in the details section, I'm going to use Apex detail component, right? Okay, Apex detail component, if you remember, it requires an ID. It shows details of the record, but it needs an ID, which record's detail needs to be shown. Okay, so for a standard controller page, it was taking the ID from the URL, but in this case, the ID is not supplied in the URL. So if the ID is not given in the URL, Apex detail component has got one more attribute called subject, where the ID can be passed. Okay, so because in this example we are not supplying the ID in the URL, Apex detail component can take the ID through subject also. There is an attribute called subject. It can take the ID from there. That is it. So it's going to take the ID from here. Now what we are going to do is we have to call this account ID here in the subject. So this account ID is a parameter. It is actually stored in current page dot parameters dot account ID. See? Yes. Okay, this is the location where all the parameters are stored for a page. Okay, all the parameters for this page are stored here. So that's the reason why this is a syntax which we have to give, and this is the name of the parameter. Okay, so the account ID, which is actually supplied to this variable or to this parameter, will be used by this detail component to display the details of the record. That's it. That's the connection. Let's see if it is working or if there is any problem. Let me click on Edge Communications. Did you see this? Click on Express Logistics. See details of that record. All right. So what is happening? We are actually using the same parameter. One where we are supplying the value to the parameter. One where we are actually calling the value of that parameter and updating the details of the record. So actually what happens? Try and understand the logic. When you click on a record, okay, this command link is doing what? Command link is passing the value to this parameter and then the page gets reloaded. If you try to understand this part, give me one moment. Let me remove this title also from the detail component. It's occupying a lot of space. Okay, try and understand this. Or look at this part of the page. While I click on a record, you look at this part of the page. Did you notice something? If you didn't, look at it one more time. I will just click on the link. You look at this part of the page. Okay. Did you notice something? The page is getting reloaded, right? So what is this command link doing? It is reloading the page. All right. So when I click on a particular record, it stores the ID of that record in the parameter and then it reloads the page. Got it? So now my parameter has got a new value. Account ID has got a new value. The page gets reloaded. Page gets reloaded means this section also gets reloaded. Now when this section gets reloaded, it now shows me the record with the current value of the parameter. Okay. Earlier it was edge communication. When I click on Dickinson, let's say I click on this Dickinson record, what will happen? Parameter will take the ID of this Dickinson record and then the page will get reloaded. Okay. After page getting reloaded, what happens? This section also gets refreshed. Now this section finds that no, ID is not of edge communication, it is of this Dickinson, and that record starts displaying. Okay. That's the mechanism. Why I want you to understand the mechanism, so that you can understand how things are working, how they are connected to each other. All right. So this is how simple is to create this kind of a page. Now you can create different parameters. You can define different parameters. Let's say instead of details, I want to display the name of the selected account record. I can define one more parameter here. You did one param. You can do one more param. Apex param name can be account name, value can be this type. I want the value to be a dot name. Okay, so I've defined one more parameter, account name, which holds the name of the account record. Okay, now in this section, instead of this static title details, I want to display the name of the record, selected record. Okay, same way you can bring and copy and paste this entire stuff. Copy, paste, and it has to be account name. Name of the parameter is different. Location remains same. All the parameters of this page are saved at the same place. Okay, click on this. See, name is coming through another parameter. All right. Clear on this? Okay, fine. Now let me know if anyone has a question or doubt here anywhere.